after taking New Year's off. The Orangebloods Modcast is back. I'm Geoff. That's Anwar. That's Alex. No Jason Sukumel today. We wish him just get better, Jason. That's what we're rooting for with you, just to start feeling a little bit better. And we're wishing that Cole Patterson gets his car fixed. If I'm pulling an Alex at the beginning of the Modcast, Anwar, I'm just asking for things in the very beginning. Happy New Year's, fellas. We're going to be talking about probably a lot of the portal and the All-American games and just kind of the Texas football program entering a new year and all of the challenges that face Steve Sarkisian and his crew going into its second year in Austin and a year where they can kind of assess what went wrong and where they go from here. Alex, I'll start with you. Where's your head at? It's 2022. It's a brand new year. Before we get too deep into the topics at hand, with regards to Texas in 2022, where's your head the most right now?
Well, I just got done. I just posted my article on Orangebloods right now about Kelvin Banks, like we talked about. Is he the left tackle of the future? That's already, as you figure, Catch, that's already getting a response. I don't understand. I see on here that Devon Campbell, I mentioned that, he could certainly be somebody that I would consider a left tackle of the future. And everybody's saying, no, he's too short. His arms are too short. All this stuff. I'm just like, you guys, man, we've lost sight here of what's what. We really have. That we're just like, we're looking at this at such a micro level to where that, you can look at a player like Devon Campbell and not, they're like, he's too short. I'm just like, Zach Martin was too short and he wasn't long enough. Kyle Long wasn't long enough. His arms were too short. A lot of people thought Connor Williams was too short. His arms weren't long enough. So that's where my mind is. My mind is arguing with these people on Orangebloods about, where Kelvin Banks and Devon Campbell and all these new offensive line guys are going to fit in. And it's going to be a fun exercise to take part in over the course of the winter.
Alex, real quick, because I want to go to Anwar, but just to follow up on that point before we get too far away from it, to me, Justin Blaylock that's who Devin Campbell, that's my player comparison for Devin Campbell just in general. And it's ironically, Justin Blaylock is a guy that, although guard was always his best position, always where he played in the NFL, he was more than a serviceable tackle for Texas when asked to play tackle. I kind of think that about Devin Campbell too. If you needed him to play tackle, that might not be where he plays on Sunday, but he might be your best lineman. And if he's your best overall lineman, that guy might need to play tackle.
Yeah, no, that's what I'm saying. And like I see this dude Chase Dunnigan in the comments saying, did Campbell commit? Did I miss something? No, he didn't. But I was, what I was saying is, in the column, if you read it, it was just, if we can make a definitive statement about a guy that we're talking about left tackle of the future, to me, if Devon Campbell was in this class, I'd be comfortable saying that based on some of the new things that I pointed out about Kelvin Banks. I'm not saying he couldn't play left tackle for Texas. I just think that there's some new information that's come. I'd also like to tell this dude, Todd Freeman, he'd like to hear Alex discuss his fantasy football championship. Sorry, not sorry. To that guy, I'll tell him to screw off, man. Losing 190, what did I lose, Catch? 176.97 to 177.04
to 176.97.
Yes, by less than a yard. And I could discuss my other main league's championship that I actually won by 50 points. But yeah, that's definitely a tough loss this week. Not to get us too far off track.
That must have been Bill Biddick's brother-in-law or something like that coming in here talking that smack.
Talk about wanting to jump off a bridge, man.
Like, how are you getting trolled already? Like, that's pretty amazing. Like, for an inside thing.
Anwar, what's funny about that is I think Alex is sometimes the most popular guy on the staff. And if he's the guy getting trolled out of the gate early on, then
we're in trouble.
This might be a long Modcast. Anwar, same question to you. Where's your head at today with regards to the program that we're covering?
Well, first of all, Happy New Year to everybody. Thank you guys for joining us for the first Modcast of the year, first of many. So do appreciate you guys. Stay safe, by the way. Catch, really the thought process is still a little bit of the tail end for me of last year, and it still begins a little bit this year, and it kind of shapes my perspective and how I believe the lens that I will have to view this season as. I still, in my mind, is one, influx of young players. How many of these young guys does Steve Sarkisian play? And realistically, do we go full rebuild mode versus trying to win it all now, right? And I think for me, it's, you never want to say, obviously, we're not trying to win games, right? We get that, but I think if you go young, you're saying like you're doing building blocks to get to where you eventually want to be. And I don't know how you jump from 5 to 10 to 12. And I know people use the Baylor example and Aranda, and we always use the success stories. We never always quote like the other stories. Like every 6th-round quarterback is like Tom Brady, and we don't talk about every other 6th-round quarterback that's never been Tom Brady, right? I mean, that's just how it goes. So everyone points to the success, but for me, it's when I think of the young talent that's there, what Alex is writing about, Quinn Ewers is going to be coming in. You're going to have a young influx of talent combined with some older guys. My thought process is, okay, do we go 2015? And do you go and say, all right, just play the young guys, hope they learn and build and try to grow from there? Or are you trying to like mix in some of the older veterans with the young guys? And then at that point you say, well, how many of the older guys do you really want to play? And how many young guys you want to get some playing experience now? That's kind of where my thought process is to start off 2022.
Well, Anwar, let's pick it up there, because I think that ultimately that's the 2022 conversation for Texas. I mean, we can get into the portal, we can get into specific players and where they look to strengthen where they can. But this conversation about expectations, what year 2 under Steve Sarkisian is supposed to look like. I think if I asked this question last year at this exact same time, right? So Sark would have been on the job for a few days, less than a week. If we'd said to Texas fans, what are you expecting from Steve Sarkisian in year 2? I think they'd be saying, well, we expect to be competing for a championship. And I think they would have expected that the things that we'll talk about with this year's team, going with youth, playing a young quarterback, building for the season afterwards. I think that that's the thing that people would have expected in year 1. Weirdly, let me ask this question to both of you. Does anybody feel like last season was anything but an absolute waste? Like, what good came out of last year that is tangible to the point where we think it's a huge component of the future of the program?
I mean, I can there was some addition by subtraction, right? I mean, you can say that there were guys that, some of that addition by subtraction, hilariously, guys like Ray Thornton were dudes who were brought in by Sark already. So it's like, it wasn't like that was addition plus addition by subtraction or whatever. But, there were people in this program that clearly, I mean, we talked behind the scenes, guys. We knew that there were dudes that weren't necessarily told to hit the portal, but who were sort of led to believe that maybe things weren't looking the best for them around here, and that maybe they didn't necessarily fit into the plans. And they had a lot of work ahead of them to, get back over these guys that could have been recruited over them, or who would be soon getting recruited over them. I think that there's something to be said for that aspect of kind of not clearing out personnel or anything like that, but kind of setting the runway for what it is that you have planned. And I think Sark had a lot more clearing of the runway to do once he got in here and sort of identified everything, all the different pieces, than he might have thought whenever he first came in. So I feel like he's cleared the runway. Whether that's enough to do in 1 year to make it seem like much more than a total waste, I'm not completely sure. Clearly, they've done a good job at developing inroads at recruiting in Texas. I mean, that's good. They're a year ahead with that. So if anything, they've gained a year of that. And they've been successful in recruiting, so it's a good building block to work on moving forward. I would guess.
Yeah, Alex, I would kind of, one of the things I wrote down was the recruiting uptick. Like we know, like last year, under the previous staff, like recruiting really wasn't going anywhere, and so I don't know if all things are equal, that they finish as high as they did this in the 2022 class. So you probably get a little. You can probably say the recruiting aspect of it. You get Quinn Ewers back. And does he come back under normal circumstances? Maybe not. So, so your aspect probably plays a part. We got to see Bijan a little bit, obviously, in not sharing a role, but being the primary back. And we're able to see what he's able to do. You're able to get Xavier Worthy. But to your point, Ketch, as far as wins and losses are concerned, and we're talking about like lots of little things. We're not talking about the bottom line, which you're ultimately judged by, which is going to be the W's and the L's. From the W's and the L's perspective, it was a tragedy. It was definitely a step back. It was a step in a direction that I don't think anyone anticipated at all. I mean, not bowl eligible. Like, I don't think anyone, when you would have said, that day that Steve Sarkisian's hired, or any subsequent press conference, anytime in the spring, anytime right before the season, there's not a single person that was like, I see 5 wins. I see 5 wins, lost to Kansas. Like, that's exactly what I see for this team. And then they'll tear it down and try to build it back up. Like, nah, I don't think we saw that. We got to say, like, that was a huge disappointment. But there were some other things that doesn't make it a total waste. Just from a win-loss perspective, though, yeah, it becomes a tragedy, though.
Well, there's 2 sides of this conversation. There's the recruiting side, which talent acquisition has been kind of a strong point. I mean, Xavier Worthy is the best thing to come out of the 2021 season. And that was about talent acquisition. Probably not enough of last year's class was able to make the impact that I think a lot of people hope that this year's class will make. It just, then there's the on-field stuff, and it's just hard. It's hard to gauge. And a lot of it, I think, will come down to what are we going to – like, I've been wondering this week how we react to Quinn Ewers in the spring, because everybody's so gassed up about, I think, the expectations for him as a player that I wonder how quickly 5-7 turns into this team should be 10-2 and look at the rest of the conference. I mean, we do this thing every year. Mm-hmm. Everybody in the conference lost all their players, and so they'll be worse.
Hey, it's gonna be a down year for OU. I mean, just get ready to hear about that, right?
Oh, absolutely. And I don't know. I feel like there's a moment coming where we're all grounded right now, and we're like 7-5 and 8-4 seems respectable. And to be completely fair, if they were to go 8-4 this year with the talent that they have, you probably feel like, okay, now that's the floor for 2023. That they go 7-5 and 8-4 in 2022. There absolutely has to be a jump forward in 2023. These just kind of meta conversations, though, I don't know how well they work for most Texas football fans. I think the mainstream Texas football fan will expect 9-10 wins because those are always the annual expectations. And I don't know what happens if, Anwar, this does turn into a team where they play tons of young guys and you take your lumps along the way when you go with a total youth movement. But it might be the best thing for the program, and managing winning now versus when should we expect to be good and maybe we should be planning for that. That's just a weird – I think that's a hard conversation for fans to have.
I mean, it's a hard conversation, and I'll make it even more difficult, and I'll add to it. This still becomes this upcoming season still becomes a season, Ketch, where Sarkisian still has to prove himself as a head coach. As unpopular as that may sound to a certain degree, we can't ignore the facts. We can't ignore that he's the most regular season wins he's ever had in his career has been 8. Like that's just what it is. We can't ignore what happens when his teams are trailing at halftime. Like the numbers are not favorable, when that occurs. And so, and we can't ignore that you're coming off a 5-win season when you inherited a team that had won 4 straight bowl games. So there's this belief that Sarkisian. Look, everyone says great things about him. Like we totally understand that, but we still have to see it as a head coach here at a major program, University of Texas, translating all of those things and being able to be the QB whisperer and have a good offense, all that other type of stuff to still be able to say, okay, you got to get involved on this defense and figure out a way to fix this defense that was so horrifically ranked, to the point where he said, with 2 games left, Ketch, he said, yeah, I feel like I'm probably going to need to get more involved in that. And at that point, I said, Ketch, no time like the present. I mean, you still got 2 more games. Like, you feel free to do it now. You don't have to wait until the offseason. So, for me, before you make the jump and you start telling yourself, hey, 9, 10, the sky's the limit. OU's trash. Baylor, I mean, can they repeat that, what they've done? Oklahoma State, who are they going to lose? Like, before you tell yourself all that, I think you got to look inward and say, okay, what do you have? How many young players do you have? And then add into that, hey, Sarkisian, no more than 8 wins. Can he then go and hit the next level in his coaching career as a head coach? As an assistant at Alabama, Alabama's in the national championship game. So Alabama didn't necessarily blink too much when they lost all those guys to Texas. Is about like these guys showing that I can do it on my own.
Couple of things real quick to everybody who's in the chat. Start getting your questions in. We want to be interactive. We want to take your questions, especially on a day like today when there's not, I think, a dominant topic that we can just talk about that's real newsy. So if you have anything specific for myself, Alex, Anwar, get it in. We'll be taking your questions. We will get more interactive. And Anwar, just to finish up on the point that you were making, when you talk about what Sarkisian has to do, it kind of reminds me of Tom Herman and the honesty with which he spoke about how hard he thought being a head coach was, that he didn't want to call plays because he didn't think he could and still be an offensive coach and a good head coach at the same. He didn't know that he could multitask at high levels. And we know Sarkisian is a great coordinator. He's never said this. And I've never got a sense that Steve Sarkisian lacks confidence at all. But when we talk about the need for Sarkisian as in his profession to take a step up, and in order for Texas to be a success, it will require that from Sarkisian. I think about what Herman talked about with how hard it is. And I wonder if Sarkisian, if we gave him truth serum, if he would say, it is kind of hard to be the head coach and the offensive play caller. It's never going to change, right? Like, that's why he's here. But it's hard not to think about Herman admitting how much he struggled with that when thinking about Sarkisian, because Sarkisian is doing the thing that Herman was really reluctant to do. But Herman said he was really reluctant to do it for reasons that, like, probably are legitimate. And sometimes we just look at it and go, well, Lincoln Riley can do it, so it must be easy. Lincoln Riley's kind of like the Tom Brady 6th-round pick.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it doesn't always happen that way, I guess, is the moral of that story.
Do you know what Lincoln Riley's always been like to me, Ketch?
What's that?
He's been more like the Aaron Rodgers following the Brett Favre. It's like, or the Andrew Luck following the Peyton Manning. It's just like you get the long-time dude there that's just been the complete stud, and you have the other guy that just steps up and he's a stud right after at the most important spot. And you're just like, how does this team in my division or this team in my, they keep on getting these awesome quarterbacks, and I've been in quarterback purgatory for 10 years. That's sort of how it felt with the Oklahoma coaching succession recently. It's
all right.
tough to see those elite guys.
We'll go into some questions. Terry Freeman on Facebook, I believe, asking Onwar, I'll go to you on this. The question is, what's up with Gary Patterson or help for PK's defense? we haven't officially reported anything yet on the latest with Patterson because it's still been very quiet. But it does feel like behind the scenes, maybe it's not the layup that, I don't know, maybe it never looked like a layup, but it never looked like a 3-point shot, like a Steph Curry 3-point shot either. And now it feels like somewhere maybe between a free throw and a 3-point shot, if that analogy makes any sense.
Yeah, I mean, the thing is, there's a couple of things. There's no real prior like history with Steve Sarkisian and Gary Patterson. So this thought that, this is just a natural thing, these guys are of each other, but they can't say they worked on a staff together. Like they have, they've coached against each other for years, like none of that type of stuff. So you're still talking about two people who don't know each other that well and know of each other. You still have Gary Patterson who has options and trying to figure out what he wants to do. Steve Sarkisian doesn't seem to be in a hurry. I mean, this is not a coaching role that he would be potentially looking forward. So it's not something that needs to be done right away. It's something that he can take his time on. Sarkisian wanted to focus primarily on recruiting in the month of December, and they were going to have a meeting, and then that meeting got put off because he just wanted to focus on recruiting. Holidays, occurred at that point. So, the conversations will likely pick up, but I don't think, the slam dunk like this is just going to happen because why wouldn't Gary Patterson want to be at Texas? It's just not like that. It's just Gary Patterson's a guy who's, coached his own program for how many years. So it's not like he's like, oh my God, I'm dying to do this. Certain things. So I think we just got to give it some time. You got to be patient with it and let them sort it out on their own time, which, by the way, it just doesn't seem like they're in a huge hurry to get it done. I would imagine, by at least winter conditioning, we should probably know something in the next couple of weeks because you expect winter conditioning to start soon, but everyone's just taking their time on it, Catch.
Alex, I'm going to put you on the spot. I'm sure you can see the question. K-Drag 4. My question every day. It's the reason why I selected it, because he's letting us know he's apparently asking either us or someone this question every day. Do you believe that Coach Choate should have been retained? Or should be retained, I guess?
Look, I don't think that Coach Kwiatkowski or mainly really anybody on defense last year had any kind of outstanding year. I know that the fan base loves Bo Davis for the video that got leaked and everything like that. But the fact of the matter is that the defensive line was probably the most underperforming unit based on what we thought they were going to be preseason. With Choate, there were some interesting decisions, man. Like kept on playing Luke Brockermeyer over Jalen Ford, which was interesting. We've talked about it before, but the back-breaking run plays versus Oklahoma State and versus Oklahoma both came because Luke Brockermeyer couldn't get off blocks when he was moving laterally. And I couldn't understand how they couldn't see this. How this wasn't just, when these games got down to the fourth quarter and these teams tried to ice off Texas by running the football with them. Luke kept on having these issues, and I didn't really understand it. I'm not sure how much exact development that we saw out of the linebacker spots last year. With that being said, I think it goes more like if it was me in charge, maybe I would think about not retaining the guy. Maybe I would think about cleaning house on defense. I'm not exactly sure, but I mean, Coach Sarkisian has relationships with these dudes. He understands them. He knows what it took to get them out of their previous spots. I mean, Coach Choate wasn't he a head coach?
Yeah.
He was a head coach. Coach Kwiatkowski, if he would have stayed at Washington by now, would probably be the Washington head coach based on how things fell. I mean, it's really like, it's like Sark said, and I kind of feel the same way. These guys, I don't think they forgot how to coach overnight. So I think it's only reasonable to, give him another year. I think it's perfectly fair to ask the question. Like Ketch said, it's an impossible question to answer. I'm not one to just go around saying, willy-nilly that somebody should be fired. But they're definitely, I can understand why you're asking it based on, the production of the linebackers last season. It's a tough question to answer, Ketch. Do you have a different opinion than me? That's just kind of fence sitting with it and just saying, I can understand why somebody would ask, but I can also understand why Sark wouldn't do it.
You may be surprised by this. I think you're 100% right. I mean, I do understand the question being asked, and I see it through the exact same prism through which you do, which is, we know they hired Geoff Choate to be linebackers coach. I thought that was an incredible win. It's like, wow, you're getting this head coach who's been successful as a head coach and is known for coaching defense. You're getting this guy to come in and be a position coach. I thought that was going to be a huge win for the position and for the defense. I mean, I really had high expectations for the staff they put together, and it just didn't happen at all last year. And look, as much as I am a fan of DeMarvion Overshown, I didn't think he had the year. Like, I think by comparison of every other Texas player on the roster, DeMarvion Overshown had a pretty good year.
Yeah.
But in terms of the best linebackers in the country, which is what I think DeMarvion aspires to be, like, I don't think he was that kind of a guy this year. He wasn't making huge, impactful plays. The position as a whole didn't land. And I tend to think, okay, Geoff Choate didn't forget how to coach. So I can't explain what happened, but it does make me think, Anwar, that going into year two, that position, because he's not a recruiter. So it really comes down to, like, his job is to be a kick-ass coach. And it'll be paramount for him this year that his position play really well. I'm fascinated to see where it goes, specifically at linebacker next year.
You're right. I think it's, it's hard to, it's like it's year one. There's been so many changes on a defense. It's easy to kind of like excuse certain things and say, it's a new system. These guys are learning, so on and so forth. Now, to Alex's point, the tape don't lie, you look at it and you're like, hey, I don't know what they're seeing or what they're talking about, but this tape doesn't lie. But Catch, I just think, and I agree with Alex. You give him another shot, give him another year, and then you see what happens. Because, quite honestly, if this defense plays the way that it played last season, there'll probably be multiple changes that will be made, and it won't just be at linebacker. I mean, you could potentially have a new DC and other guys. So I think if you're Sark, you do what you say. All right, you get more involved. He said he had ideas that he wanted to share, which again is really interesting that he seemed like he was so on the outs of the defensive side of it, but then says he has ideas he wants to share. So yeah, I think as it relates to Choate, though, you give it. He says he's going to be more involved, and he's more involved, and I think he can make a better assessment going forward.
I feel like this next question from Pete Brandt is kind of putting the ball on a tee for all of us. We all have our favorites in recruiting. So, Alex, I'll start with you. Which recruit comes in and makes a different day one jump street?
Oh, man. I'd like to pull up a list of them real quick. Anwar, do you have one? Do you have one off the top of your head while I'm doing this, or do you want me to just pull it up and we can go over it? Like, so pull it up, and so 2022 commits. Oh goodness, there's a lot of these guys that can come in and make an immediate impact. I think that, dude. I think you can just take it from so many different angles. On the offensive line, I just wrote about Kelvin Banks. He's going to have to make an immediate impact somewhere. Whether he's the left tackle of the future is the point of the column, but maybe I'll just go with that. Although I will say, man, watching those Kelvin Banks versus Justin Finkley highlights from the Under Armour game, dude. Finkley's got something to him. And with all the help that Texas needs at edge rusher, between Jamon Tapp, who apparently has been showing out pretty well down there in San Antonio this week, and Justice Finkley that had the big week in Orlando, I think those two guys are two that can come in and make a big impact. I could go through those. Dude, there's a lot of I could go through. I mean, I'm looking at Terrence Brooks and thinking that he could come in and be an impact guy right off the bat, just based on the fact that I think he could play nickel, he could play corner, he could play safety, and they have needs at all of those spots. And he'll be a spring enrollee. But I think when we look at all these guys, man, just immediate impact. Kelvin Banks, not sure we can call him the future at left tackle just yet, but we do know that we can call him a future stud piece of that offensive line. I don't think there's anybody who's watched any bit of his junior or senior film that would say he's not going to come in and immensely just be an upgrade over a lot of these guys regardless. And as catches, you've continued to say, we can't make that the bar, right? We can't just say that this guy's going to be this dude for the future because he's better than what Texas currently has, because that's not a high enough bar. But Kelvin Banks is I projected a level above that bar. And so I think that he can come in and make an immediate contribution.
Anwar, who you crushing on?
I mean, from an immediate, okay, I'll give the immediate. Obviously, is Banks, right? That's probably the easy one for me. I'm not sleeping on Nato. I don't know how to pronounce his last name. How do you say it?
I actually wrote a note on this on Orangebloods, and I've already forgotten how to say it. It's not all how you would think. It's like I'll look it up and I'll tell you in a minute. I'll go.
Okay, yeah. If you give me the pronunciation, I don't want to butcher it.
We can just say NATO. Like, it's okay. I think that's going to be what everybody calls him.
Okay, so then that's what's up. I would definitely.
Here it is. It's NATO Yamuzalo.
Yes.
Okay, got it. All right, thank you.
NATO.
Catch, if Cameron Dicker decides to leave, I mean, I guess I got to put something on Will Stone. I got to put a little something on his name. The guy, though, if you're asking me like who and I don't know if he has immediate impact, but at some point, give me some Ethan Burke stock. Like, just give me some of his stock as a guy
like that.
I think that he may, if it's not immediate, I think in a couple of years, that's that dude. Like, I think he's potentially like all Big 12, to me.
Alex, real quick, with regards to Ethan Burke, that should be like a spur on the backside for Alfred Collins, right? Like, if Ethan Burke is playing as a true freshman, someone asked a question earlier about Alfred Collins. Like, God, that's a guy that I thought was going to be the best defensive lineman on the team last year by the end of the season. And it never came together. And the last staff was so high on him. And I don't feel like I've ever heard Steve Sarkisian go on about, like, they got to get more out of Alfred Collins, but it feels like we're at a real crossroads for him because he'll get passed up if he's not careful.
Well, and what's so funny, Catch? I remember the first time I ever met Alfred Collins was one of those times where you guys had me Jason had me helping him with stalking the players as they walked into one of the camps, and I talked to Alfred Collins. I just remember, man, this guy's so big and tall and stuff. But he had, at the time, he had these big feet, these big hands, and I was like, boy, is he going to grow into his body? And he was just saying something. I remember him saying, I asked him a question. He's like, well, I can see myself here for the next 3 years. All this stuff. Like, I remember thinking, like, 3 years. It's like, this guy already thinks he's going pro after 3. Like, that was his goal coming in for sure. And now we're kind of coming into that spot where, like, if he's going to do that, he needs to really turn it on this year. I think Ethan Burke, he's just, I mean, I've noticed 90 for Westlake every time I've turned it on. I always thought I'm just like, what to make of him exactly, because he seems so long and skinny. But the more and more you watch him, and especially through that senior year, the more and more you watch him, you're like, whoa, like, there's some stuff here. If he puts this together, like, he has room for 50, like, he literally has room for 50 pounds on his frame. It's absurd. Like, he has room for, like, literally 50 pounds. And so we could be looking at a dude that's 6'6", 200 and what does he weigh now? 230, something like that. He's real skinny at 6'6". We're looking at a guy that can maybe be 6'6", 280 at some point. But with that kind of power and those kinds of moves and you don't get that kind of bend and that kind of balance from a dude that's that tall, that offense. When you get that bend and that balance mixed together with that length and the ability to bend the edge plus that length, what does that? I mean, you can reach halfway into the pocket. It really is something absurd. I'm not sure it's going to happen in year one, but I mean, I think I'm with Anwar. I'm excited about Ethan Burke, and certainly, as always, go Shaps.
By the end, you're allowed to be a Westlake homer. When you've got a state championship ring, you get to be a homer like forever.
Yeah, for the rest of your life.
It's like winning a national championship at Texas, I suppose. All those guys can be fans forever. By the end of his senior year, I was like, wait, who's this? Where's he going again? And it was like Michigan. And it was like, oh. And then it just all made sense. It was like, God, Harbaugh's going to get that guy, and they're going to put 50 pounds on him, and he's going to come back home for like an alumni game 3 years in or something.
Oh, God.
And nobody's going to recognize him. He's going to look like a full-ass grown man. That's kind of how I view him. I don't see him as a year one. He could. I mean, when we were as bad as Texas was on defense last year at times, all hands on deck. And Anwar, I think he would have played this year. Like, he'd have been 17 and I think getting reps on this defense. But I tend to think of him as in 2024, that guy might be your best player on your defense. And, you know, just give him a little bit of time to throw that weight on. It's a huge responsibility for the strength and conditioning staff. This is one of the first guys that, to me, will grade Becton on.
Yeah.
Because I have no doubts that if Michigan gets their hands on Ethan Burke, I can close my eyes and see it. So now it's got to happen. It's got to happen. And this Texas strength and conditioning staff's really got to build him up to let him reach his optimal. Real quick, I'll answer the question. We'll take some more questions. I'm going to cheat. I think Devin Campbell is going to be the impact player from the 2022 recruiting. I see you, Alex, but I just said I'm cheating. Okay. I expect Devin Campbell to sign with Texas. And I was getting ready to say, in my head, I was answering this question, and I was like, you know, I think the most disappointing thing about the All-American Bowls that have happened so far is not one of the Texas commits has, in my mind, played at a level where you were like, holy hell, that guy's one of the best 5 guys at that game. Banks didn't do that. NATO was good, but he didn't do that.
Finkley looked good. He looked good.
They looked good, but there wasn't one guy that was like, stop the presses. This guy was incredible from day one all the way through the entire week, except Devin Campbell was. Devin Campbell was the guy that everybody
very predictably. It's very predictably, right?
Yeah. He goes to the All-American game. He's playing against elite young players, and he was, by the end of the week, like the asterisk guy. All of these guys are good, but damn, like they're asking the question at Rivals right now, should Devin Campbell as a guard end up being the highest ranked offensive lineman in this class? That's the question that will be asked about the offensive line in that last rankings update that Rivals does. So I think Campbell on offense. I actually have really high hopes for NATO and I think all 3 of those guys, Kelvin Banks, NATO, and Devin Campbell, could all by the end of the year be seeing a lot of playing time. I think Devin Campbell's jump street. I don't know where they put him, but that is maybe the best lineman on your team the moment he shows up. And I don't care who you have to move out of the way to get him on the field. Really. There's nobody on that line. Like if you tell me that you've got to move Junior Angle out.
Well, you would never do that just because you could move others around to keep Junior on the field.
But I'm not saying take him off the field.
I see what you mean. Just even in a vacuum.
If it means to get him in his best place, you move Junior, whatever. Like get him on the field, get your best 5 on the field. And I think he's that guy. I think Brennan Thompson, I think Jordan Whittington, low key, has a real battle on his hands to keep the level of playing time that I think he'll expect going into this season. Because I think Brennan Thompson is a Steve Sarkisian guy, and he brings so much speed that getting him on the field in the slot, even if you don't throw him the ball, having legitimate 10-3 speed on the field changes the way teams have to defend your offense. So I think he's got a chance to play a lot early on. And then I think on the defensive side of the ball, I mean, all those dudes, Finkley, Jamon Tapp, I don't know where they play him right away. Like he's got a weird body with his skill set, versus where I think they might want him to play right away. And I don't know if it takes him a year. He could show up and be the best defensive player from the class immediately, or it might take an adjustment period for him to grow into and develop where he's playing some safety this week. And there's a lot of people who are like, God, that just shows how freaky athletic he is. And I agree, but he ain't playing safety in college. So what that kind of tells me is they don't exactly even know what to do with him in this all-star game.
But isn't that also with COVID? Like, haven't they had some COVID stuff where they're just having to move kids around?
Yeah, they have had numbers. But if you thought he was your best edge rusher,
you wouldn't be, right?
You're not doing it. So I just don't know exactly where he plays. Everybody on defense, basically. Hey, Anwar, to your kicker point, I'm going to have a little bit of this in the war room. I expect in the next couple of days for Cameron Dicker to make his announcement, and I think he's coming back.
Yeah,
I think he's coming back, and I think he's going to have NIL deals. And just my gut feeling is that we've got one more guy who's going to announce that he's going to stick around. I think it's going to be Cameron Dicker. I could be wrong, but I've had a few hints here and there from people who know Dicker or know the situation, who told me the decision is coming. And, so that would be – I think that'd be the best news that Texas could get. Let me see.
And the thing is, Ketchum, one of the things I wrote in my column on Sunday why I thought he would come back, and Alex could attest to this. I mean, he's missed out on the opportunities to go to like a Senior Bowl or, an East-West, where, he would probably have had the opportunity to, kick and perform in front of other people. So you're missing out on the All-Star games at this point. Now at that, he would have to rely solely on tape, which is not bad. In his pro day. And I think Dicker's a guy, Alex, you would tell me, I think Dicker's a guy that would be someone who could get a Senior Bowl invite. Like, I view him as a guy that people would want to look at. And so I think with that missed opportunity, I think, to me, it's all kind of been leading towards him coming back. But Alex, I just want to get your opinion, on that as well.
No, it's hard for I don't really know, like at the Senior Bowl I don't really watch the kickers and stuff very much. I don't know.
But I'm just saying to get an invite, Alex.
No, I mean, it's a big deal for these guys for sure. They definitely have, special teams coaches there. I mean, even if you look, here's the deal with the Senior Bowl and all the rest of it. If you go there and you get the invite, it means that you will have interviewed with all 32 NFL teams to some degree, and just getting that sort of exposure to literally every single team, to where you don't have to, at the combine, you don't have to be one of their top 30 visits, or, you don't have to be one of their visits to the combine. You don't have to be one of their top 30 visits that visits the actual campus of these facilities. It's like you get to meet with every single team. You get exposure to every single team. I mean, the value that's there just in that is huge, and it puts you sort of at the forefront with them. So obviously, it's a Senior Bowl and stuff's a big deal. And I mean, if I was him, I would certainly take that into consideration.
And don't forget, Alex, his agent would be able to talk to teams while in the lobby, so on and so forth, also at the combine.
Yes, and at the bars around the combine and the Senior Bowl, right?
Yeah. All right, Anwar, I'm coming to you with this one, but we'll all talk about this. Jaquavius, great name, by the way. Do you guys think Texas will take more than one wide receiver from the portal?
Sorry, Kesh, there seems to be a little delay on my end. I would say yes. I would definitely, obviously they're looking at the kid from Wyoming, as a potential. So, I mean, they're clearly in the wide receiver market, as it stands. You also got a, new wide receivers coach coming in. And, I'm sure he's done his assessments, but, we all know that room can be upgraded just, a little bit. And, because once you get past Xavier Worthy, you've got two other guys. You've got Troy O'Meary, who we hear looks great in practices. He's just had the injury bug. And then, of course, Jordan Whittington has had an injury bug as well. So, it doesn't hurt to try to get some depth in that room, because once you got past Xavier, when guys were, once you got past like a Jordan or Troy not being healthy, it was kind of like a crapshoot, So I'm definitely think they can. I think one guy, I don't know about two receivers, but I would think one they get out of the transfer portal.
Would you even, given the needs of the program, Alex, would you take two if you only had 5 spots and one's going to Devin Campbell?
Oh, one's going to Campbell. So 5. So I want 2 safeties, 1 wide receiver, and 1 linebacker.
Okay. Now, I think we had this conversation in the last Modcast, how we would divvy all of that up. Yeah, I think they're going to take 1 wide receiver. Because the thing is, I don't think they've got 2 starting wide receiver slots to sell. So, Anwar, if they get Isaiah Nayer out of Wyoming, and I think there's a good chance that could happen. I mean, it seems like they're in the top 3, and he's taking a visit to Texas today. I mean, they got a real good shot there. If you get him, you've got a starting 3 of Xavier Worthy, Nayer, and then a Whittington, Brennan Thompson combo, if you will. Like, I don't think they're going to recruit a slot guy because they want to play Brennan Thompson. And even if they don't completely trust Jordan Whittington, he's going to play a lot. Mm-hmm. So, I'm with Alex. That allocation has to probably go somewhere else. It'll feel a little bit like Keelan Robinson if they take another wide receiver and he's their 5th guy.
Especially with the fact that they're probably going to have to be, they're going to be running a lot of 2 tight end. I mean, we've seen that they run a lot of 2 tight end sets where the slot guy doesn't even get in there. So, yep, I agree.
Next question. This one kind of staying in the same topic. Chris Nelson asks, are we waiting for signing day 2 before seeing more movement in the transfer portal? I'll go first on this. I don't think so. I mean, Devin Campbell's got a spot. So they're down to 4. They've offered the safety from Central Michigan. They've offered Nayer from Wyoming, the wide receiver. I mean, they can't completely go shotgun approach because I think they want to target and really go after some specific guys when they become available. And I do think they're waiting to see who else now that, I think you want to see the biggest teams in the country, Georgia, Alabama, you want to see what it looks like at the end of the year when all schools have kind of had that next flood of guys come into the portal. I mean, Nate, you think about this, the safety from Central Michigan, he only went into the portal Sunday night. Mm-hmm. I thought it was really interesting that Texas offered him by noon the next day because they haven't done that with anybody else in the portal really outside of a Quinn Ewers or a Ryan Watts. So I thought it showed real specific interest. I think it probably warms Alex's heart that they're on the same page with regards to the importance of that position being addressed. But I think they've been very selective, but as long as they're selective and on time with the offers instead of selective and weeks late and getting the offers out, I don't really have a problem with a really selective approach when you're this low on numbers, because you don't want to find yourself in a position at the end of the year, creeping up into August, where a guy or 2 becomes available and then you've got to do maybe some sketchy roster movement. Hey, can you blue shirt? Hey, can you gray shirt at the last minute because you've kind of mismanaged your roster allocation? I'm okay with where they're at right now.
Well, and the thing is, Ketch, I mean, I think the thing that's going to make you pull out what's left of your hair is
I shaved today.
So
with
left. Tweezers, apparently. Keyshawn has made it clear that he doesn't necessarily view the transfer portal as kind of like that thing. Like it seems to be like kind of the necessary evil. He'll get a guy here and there, but he seems to be more into building it through. I think he said it towards the end of last year. Seems to be more of building it through, like, his high school recruiting classes, more so the transfer portal guys. So I think that becomes the other thing where we'll follow the transfer portal and keep up with it. And they are offering guys. I don't think we'll ever see anything close to like Michigan State or maybe even Baylor to a certain degree. I don't think that's the way that Sarkisian wants to do business. Now, we can argue if that's the correct approach. That just seems to be his approach. And by the way, Ketch, can you address this at least the fifth time that someone's asked about Mario Williams?
I think, look, first of all, Mario Williams has mentioned that he would like to play with Caleb Williams. I mean, he went to Oklahoma to play with Caleb Williams. Caleb Williams transfers out. Mario Williams transfers out shortly after that. I think there's a suspicion that one way or the other, Mario Williams likely – every receiver that Oklahoma's had come into the portal, Texas fans have wondered, is that the guy? I think Nayer's the guy. I think if they miss, because I think they're going to get it. I think there's a real good chance that they get that kid, because I think he's either going to go to Texas or USC. And, at that point, your receiving position's filled. So the offer to Nayer makes me think that's who they're targeting. By the way, Michael Rockman telling us in chat that Zach Evans just committed to Ole Miss.
Somebody came up with some NIL money. Somebody came up with some NIL money.
Zach Evans finally found the bag man that he couldn't find in Fort Worth. Good for you, Zach Evans. I'm glad you found what you were looking for.
By the way, we can no longer start talking about, the SEC plays players. What conference Texas is going into.
We're going to get to a question about that in a second, Anwar. Real quick, any chance that Jordan Addison comes to Texas? Anwar, we talked about this earlier in the week. I'll let you answer this one real quick.
I don't remember us talking about this, Catch.
Oh, well, we were just talking about that the expectation was probably that getting Addison to come from Pittsburgh would probably be a tall task.
I think it's a tall task based off of he's already established there at Pitt. He's already a Blitnikoff winner. His path to the NFL is pretty clear. So for him to then say, I'm going to leave everything that I have, leave everything I've established, and then come here to Texas, basically to follow his position coach, everything we kind of kicked the tires on, it seemed like it would be a tall task. Not impossible, but it just didn't seem like that was going to be something that he would want to 100% go to, because no matter what, he's still going to have to deal with a new quarterback, whether it's there at Pitt, whether it's there at Texas. And, he doesn't have Texas roots. So it just seems, it seems like if you had to guess on something, more than likely he stays at Pitt.
Well, and no offense to Brennan Marion, who you and I raved about in a video that we did on YouTube couple days ago, and if you haven't seen that, go check out the YouTube channel and do us a solid. But if Jordan Addison enters the portal, he's going to Alabama, right? Like if you're the Biletnikoff Award winner, yes, you could follow your coach and go play for a 5-7 team, or you could just go be Jamison Williams and be Alabama's next big-time transfer portal guy. So, that's kind of where I'm at with Marion. Real quick, let me address this one. Will Amari Abor flip to Texas or stay at Ohio State? I don't want to be overly emphatic about this, but no, he will not flip to Texas. He will stay at Ohio State. I don't think there's any reason right now to think otherwise on that. Alex, I want to come to you with this one, and I'm going to build off of this. Pete Brandt asks, what do you guys think of the Tashard Choice hire? I don't know that I've heard a whole lot from you yet on both Tashard Choice and Brennan Marion, although I think there's a future column for you about the go off. I saw on YouTube, Brennan Marion has like an hour-long dissertation on his little developed offensive scheme. It sounds like an Alex Dunlap, It sounds like the kind of thing you would enjoy diving into. Just your gut feeling on watching the assistant coaching hires made the last couple of weeks.
Well, let me reserve judgment on Brennan Marion. I'd like to watch that. As far as Tashard Choice, I mean, I thought it was. I mean, here's the thing: you've heard about Coach Choice before. If you've talked to any of these Dallas trainers and stuff, these guys know him. Some of the guys who I talked to knew him. They thought it was a great hire. Whenever I had heard the name before. And then whenever Jason gets the scoop, whenever he's talking to his recruiting sources about players and stuff like that, to me, it goes to show you that dude's already a little bit looped into our world. He's kind of already in it. Like we kind of the people we talk to, he's on the periphery of what we do, even being out there at Georgia Tech. So I think coming to a place like Texas, he played professional football here. I think he played I know he played for the Bills. Did he play for the Cowboys too?
Oh yeah, that's where he spent most of his career.
Okay, so I for some reason I think of him as a Buffalo Bill for some reason. Maybe that's even wrong. But anyway, we know a good NFL player brings good pedigree. He's a good recruiter. Stan Drayton, I know that now he's moved on and everything like that, and everybody loves Stan Drayton so very much. To me, I maybe had been a little bit more critical of Drayton than a lot of other people. I hated the way that he the way he substituted in players and got in subpar players far too much before Steve Sarkisian got here. Tom Herman said that was Stan Drayton's prerogative. His running back rotations were his running back rotations. I hated them. I thought that there were some head-to-head recruiting battles that he did well in, and he brought in some of the big fish. Of course, there were some big players that he did help to bring in, but it felt like it was, just a big smash here or there at the running back spot. It didn't feel like he really brought too much to just the overall collective recruiting of the whole unit, the same way that a guy like Tashard Choice could really come in and I think he could be a stud for you in an in-home for an offensive lineman or for a wide receiver or any of these guys, just one of these all-around sort of recruiting guys. So I think that the fact that he feels like he was already a little bit looped into some of the people that we know, and some of the people that we know kind of have a lot of influence over these kids and their college decision-making processes. The fact that he feels like he's a good recruiter, and the fact that we have seen some chops from him as an actual running backs coach, it makes me feel like losing a coach like Stan Drayton to a head coaching position, clearly you're probably expecting a little bit of a fall off, but maybe not as big a fall off as some expect. I don't think that the actual running back coach, and I've said this before and people complain, I don't think that running back coaches actually, as far as what they teach, is actually as far as the skill of being a running back. I think it's the least important coach on the football field at the college level. I don't think that there's as much technique to teach these guys as there's every other position. So to see that guy's a good recruiter, he's young, he's got some juice to him as far as his communication skills and his want to go get out there on the road, really says a lot for how he's going to produce here at Texas.
Alex, I'm just kind of curious on that. Do you think Roschon Johnson is as successful and productive of a running back without the coaching of Stan, especially when you think about that position move that he had to make?
Yes. Roschon used to play quarterback. How hard
he wasn't running through holes like that.
He was doing things that are much harder. He had it way in the back of his head where these holes were and what these running backs were going to be doing. That's child's play. He has to play off of that at the quarterback position. You got to do a million other things. To him, that's the very basis of where you have to start thinking about what you're going to be doing, what your assignment is. So no, I think he would be. I think he would be fine with coaching from any running backs coach worth his salt. That's no offense against Stan Drayton. He's a great leader of men. Obviously, he's got a great pedigree with the dudes that he's coached. And
too late now. You're not getting a Christmas card, Alex.
It is done.
I don't know that I disagree with Alex. To be fair, Alex is talking about like a 4 or 5 year window with Drayton and not last year or Roschon Johnson specifically. I think he's a little bit better, but Alex's point about the running back position as a whole, especially in college football, the main thing, and we talked about this just the other day, Anwar, your wide receiver coach and your running backs coach at the collegiate level, more times than not, are expected to be rainmakers in recruiting. And the thing about Drayton, and I'd like to see Choice, this be something different with Choice too. Drayton kind of focused on running backs, and it never felt like, oh, there's a 5-star defensive back in Dallas, and he's a part of that recruitment. Texas needs guys that can recruit beyond just the positions that they're recruiting. And I think Drayton, it always felt like was given the running back decisions, and it was easier for him to just be able to focus on a guy or two. To me, in order for this Tashard Choice hire to be great, they got to let that guy go be a great recruiter and be the lead guy. If he's your best recruiter or one of your best recruiters, he's got to be more than just a lead guy on a couple of position guys every year. He needs to be involved in a lot of recruitments, and it remains to be seen whether or not he'll be allowed to do that. But I think Tashard Choice in his 30s is better positioned to be a workhorse on the road, maybe more so than Stan Drayton, who was ready to be a head coach and start doing more head coaching things and not necessarily spending 80 hours on the highways, seeing every high school possible, helping other guys on the staff with their recruitments. I don't know that that's who he is. Okay.
What's up,
by the way,
John?
thanks to John. Thanks to John Brown. He's listening live in Germany. Love the YouTube videos. Thinks the defense is decent this year. This could have been an 8-win team, so that is his floor next year.
We have international fans, Catch.
I dig that they're watching live from Germany. Sometimes I forget about how important that German market is for us. He's reminding us.
You got to do. You got to go to a sports bar in Germany and put us on the screen in there. You've got a watering hole. Just hey, put this on. I want to watch it next Thursday. And have a Longhorn Germany fan club. That's what I wanted. That's what I want. That's what I want in the new year.
This might be our last question, although maybe we'll do some rapid fire one-word answers for a few more here in a second. I've been saving this one because it feels like a doozy. And I feel like I've got a rant built inside. I'm covering you up, Alex. Todd Freeman is moving past trolling you on fantasy football. And he wants to know, A, what do we think about the reports of Texas A&M NIL $30 million spent? And 2, what do we think of old Kirk Cesspool Herbstreit and his comments on players of this era don't love football? Okay, Todd, great questions. Absolute doozies. Let's start with the Texas A&M $30 million NIL. They have bought the #1 recruiting class in the country. I definitely have an opinion on this, but I'm going to go last. Anybody else?
I just say, they're playing the game. It's the same game Texas is playing. It's you can love it, you can hate it, but it's kind of what it is at this point. That's I don't have much to say otherwise.
Okay. Anwar?
Hey, to the victor goes the spoils. This is where we're at. I've said it a billion times, and I'll say it 1,000,001. The NCAA has made it very clear. You guys can do whatever you want. You can make as much money as you want. You just can't get ours. Every check that we're getting from CBS, ESPN, all that, that's going to be what our money is. And we don't want you guys to act like you're going to get paid from us. You're going to be salaried employees. We're going to be handing out 1099s at the end of the year, health insurance, none of that shit. They've made it very clear. Do you? So yes, you basically have that. You had Oklahoma this week as relates to Caleb Williams, put out a statement and talk about NIL, which again, Catch, you and I know, and you know this specifically, schools aren't even supposed to try to help you get NILs. It's supposed to be the third party. So it is what it is. We can't talk about A&M and them doing stuff when we got Pancake, guys over here. We've got people raising money to pay Texas players. That is this new world. NIL is factoring into decisions. And I think everyone just got to get used to it. And last thing, Catch, stop freaking clutching your pearls like guys weren't getting paid before. Don't be that guy. Don't be that person I can't believe guys are getting paid. The only difference is instead of the bag man coming per se, instead of you listing your refrigerator on Craigslist for $10 or $100 and someone shows up with a bag full of $40,000 and like, I will buy your refrigerator, which is what used to happen. They're basically doing it a legit way. It's kind of like this. It's like when you went from selling marijuana illegally to now you can go into a shop with your card and buy it. You've got to get used to it. Times have changed, and this is where we're at right now.
All right, I'm gonna get hate for this. Texas fans got to stop their cry-ass baby stuff, man. Like, seriously, there are two things for me that really stand out about this that make Texas fans looking at Texas A&M and what they've done in recruiting and questioning their methods for how they've done it. A, Texas literally the week before signing day had the Pancake Factory thing. That was literally done to impact offensive line recruiting. Paying players. Don't quibble with me that you think A&M is crypto paying guys behind the. It's all they're getting paid. Players are getting paid. Texas went out of its way to like impact offensive line recruiting with that one news on position, that one position group, and so I don't want to hear it. Like, this is the world that we live in now. And you're like, oh, A&M has got their bag men and their people are like organized, and get organized. Do better. This is the world that you live in. And it's always been like this. It's always been like this. And instead of going to Alabama or Georgia, this year guys chose A&M. How they made it happen, nobody's ever going to care. Only Texas fans and Oklahoma fans and a couple of other fan groups are like, oh my God, how did Texas A&M do this? It's a crime against humanity, out of one side of their mouth while singing the virtues of the Pancake Factory and how it might impact Kelvin Banks and NATO and Devin Campbell. And come on, guys. The other thing is, fellas, you just volunteered to join the SEC. What is it you think you're getting into? Texas's leadership, athletic director, school president, board of regents, Steve Sarkisian, all the decision makers, they didn't ask for any of our opinions. They said, we want to go to the SEC. We want to go where the best football is played. There's a reason why the SEC has a $sign in its initials. We all know it. To volunteer to go to the SEC and then to look at the tried and true ways by which a lot of SEC teams acquire their talent, who do you think you are? How do you think this goes? That Texas shows up in the SEC and there's a referendum on cheating to get players? Do you think, like, that's not the deal? Texas's role is to come in and play by SEC standards. The rules aren't changing. This isn't like when the Big 12 Anwar, when the Big 12, you know why Nebraska fans hate Texas? Because
there's a lot of reasons.
There are a lot of reasons. But it originally started because when the Big 12 formed, Texas was really influential on making academic requirements and getting into school tougher than like Nebraska and Kansas State had traditionally experienced in the Big 8. And Texas was like, no, academics are going to matter. You can't just qualify with all D's in high school and get in. And Nebraska fans, it was the Prop 48 guys. The Big 12 suddenly wasn't allowing Prop 48 guys to get in. That ain't happening. Texas isn't coming into the SEC with referendums on how the conference acts. Texas chose to go into the SEC. This is where Texas chooses to make its next 100 years where it wants to be. Get used to it. Stop bitching about it. Stop crying about it. The Texas fan base just got to be better than crying about other teams. And I have seen more crocodile tears over this Texas A&M class. You know what? Do better. Now you've got to beat Texas A&M in recruiting. You got to do it. Do it. And if you don't, you're going to change coaching staffs. Like the job is hard. The task is hard. And if it's too hard for you, maybe this isn't for you. Just FYI. Maybe go be a fan of UTEP or something, and you don't have to worry about who's buying players if that's what you want. But, man, it's a new day in college football with regards to how these things get done. If Texas A&M's got $30 million of NIL money lined up for their kids, that sounds like their program did some smart shit. Sounds like they outdid Texas on the NIL front. Man up, do better. That's my message. As far as Kirk Herbstreit goes.
By the way, real quick before you go to Curb, don't think that one of the determining factors that Quinn Ewers coming to Texas wasn't NIL.
My God, he may make $5 million this year.
Right.
No Texas fan was like, whoa. Can't take him. Can't take him because that goes against our ethos. That's just not what happened. So, come on. A&M out. Don't hate the player. Hate the game. And if you're going to hate the game, find something else to do because this is the game. As far as Herbstreit goes, my biggest problem with Herbstreit in that situation is his lack of self-awareness. When was the last time Kirk Herbstreit ever did anything for free? Like, hey, I'm not taking money this month on game day. I'm donating my salary to player causes. I mean, he's in his gig as one of the highest paid media members in his profession. Just, it feels disingenuous to talk about other people's desire and love for something because of a desire to also make money from it. I mean, I love my job, Alex. Don't you love your job?
Yeah, I just do shit like this all the time.
Isn't it awesome to get paid for it? Like,
it's not just awesome. It's like it's like a blessing to where people. I'm almost embarrassed to tell people what I do for a living. It's like that's how great it is.
But you wouldn't do it for free.
It's like it's too much to do for free because then I wouldn't have time to do things that actually make me money, right?
You'd have to get a real job. Like Kirk Herbstreit would have to get a real job if it wasn't for this awesome job that he has. And I don't know. I don't hate Kirk Herbstreit, but man, the older he gets, he has just some buster ass comments on things. And, you know, this is just another one of those moments where I roll my eyes. It was very much Anwar for me, a get off my lawn kids kind of moment. And it's like, maybe this isn't for you, Kirk, if the idea of players at Ohio State, you know, making some cash. Because I'm just real quick. I remember Cedric Griffin when he was at Texas, like asking if I could hold his TV in my garage because he didn't have a home and didn't have a place to put his TV and didn't know where his next meal was going to come from during the summer, let alone like he just trusted me. I remember another player back in the day when Texas won their first Big 12 under Mac in 2000, technically a national championship. He sold his he tried to sell his national championship ring to pay for his cell phone bill because in his mind he'd win another ring, so he would just sell the one that he had so that he could pay AT&T. Like I'm good with these dudes having cash in their pockets to spend. I'm good with seeing, Jordan Whittington's going to go to New York City for New Year's or wherever. I know he went to Miami before the season started. Like, good for him. I'm okay with these dudes having things. I'm sure as shit not going to begrudge any of these guys for being able to make a little something or a lot of something off of being able to play college football. Okay, I'm done. Sorry.
Well, there's so many flaws to what he talked about, you know, in his statement, right? So he talked, you know, guys opting out of meaningless bowl games, right? Which is, let's just be honest, it's that network created, you know, this college football playoff where they basically said, these 2 games are mean the most, and then every other game doesn't really mean anything, right? So you start there. Secondly, these guys, you can't say guys don't love football and because they opt out of meaningless bowl games, and what they're doing is opting out of a game so they can train and get ready for more football. It's not like they're opting out and not playing. It's not like they're opting out and they're just sitting around and like, well, I guess the combine's coming around in February. I got nothing to do. I just don't want to play in a game. They literally are saying, I want to focus on my football training specifically all day long so then I can get ready for the NFL. So that in itself doesn't make any sense, because if you love the game, you wouldn't be wanting to do extra in order to get there. And then, of course, it always goes back to the hypocrisy of always holding players up to a standard that you don't hold coaches up to. And everyone gets mad at players that are going in the transfer portal. No one gets mad at coaches for abandoning their teams when it's time for a bowl game and letting someone else take care of it. And, do coaches not love the game? Does Lincoln Riley not love the game, right? Can you say, man, Lincoln left his team, he doesn't love football? Does he? I mean, it just, when people make their personal choices, like, I've just never been the person, like, I don't understand why you all up in my plate. Like, just worry about what you got going on over there. Like, don't worry about what I'm doing. It doesn't affect you. Let it be. But he sounds like a crotchety old man who's out of touch, who's thinking about an era where they only had a small number of bowl games too. Like, you see the numbers of when he played or Desmond Howard played, there was a smaller number of bowl games. Now teams get 6 wins, they go to a bowl game. Certain teams get 5 wins and go to a bowl game. I'm sorry. So these games are meaningless. They really are. Tell me your most memorable Cheez-It Bowl.
Exactly. Yeah.
I don't remember a Cheez-It Bowl ever.
I think for me, it's like I'm so torn here because I'm always on the side of the crotchety old man, right? I'm like always, right?
You're a young crotchety old man.
Yes, but on the other side, I'm always on the side, like Anwar says, to stay the hell out of my business. And I feel like I'm a crotchety old man that tells people to stay the hell out of my business, right? Just in a slightly younger man's body. The thing about Herb Street that I can't get behind is just the generalization that he said. He said like kids these days are, this is how they act, which is just patently absurd to make a generalization about how every college football player is and their amount of love for the game of football when they give their blood, sweat, and tears through the course of a season while also doing schoolwork and all the rest. I will say this, though. The reason that I've always had that opinion is because these guys aren't getting paid. If they want to skip their bowl game, it's fine. They're trying to preserve their body for the NFL when they are getting paid. Man, if these guys are making millions of dollars in NIL, I'll bet you that some of these NIL deals coming up are going to have stipulations saying you can't leave for the bowl game. You got to play the whole season because, kid, like you are getting paid now. We're paying you to do this job now for your name, image, and likeness, and that's going to be expected through the course of the entire season as long as you're healthy. So I'll be interested to see if that sort of becomes a talking point or a narrative or just something that's built into these contracts.
It'll be interesting to see how like the Pancake Factory works. You get your $50,000 on, say, August 1st. What's the stipulation on that? Like,
yeah,
is it prorated? Is it $4,000 a month? I'm just curious to kind of see like how that thing goes. Real quick, Larry Boone says, on the other hand, we're losing some of the purity that differentiated college football from the NFL. Larry, I'm going to give you the last word before we go into closing statements, and I'm simply going to say, no, you're not. No, we're not. College football has been a lot of things. Let's not use the idea of purity with college football, because Oklahoma in the 80s had rape scandals and guys shooting Uzis off of buildings, and you had Brian Bosworth doing the Boz thing. You had you had Urban Meyer and like his program at Florida. I mean, And if we're keeping it real, when you think Penn State, when you think of purity in college football, you're including Penn State back in the day with Joe Paterno when he had an assistant coach molesting kids. And like, just so you know, what we identify as pure. I mean, Eric Dickerson was getting multiple Trans Ams in the late 70s. How far back are we going where we say that college football is pure? I have seen a lot of things in my creeping up on 3 decades of covering college football. Purity, sure as shit isn't one of them. All right. Sorry, Larry, I wasn't picking on you, but whew, I think we romanticize college football sometimes, and we act like because kids are legally getting paid now, that this is somehow the end of the greatest era.
We are only a couple of years removed from the Baylor scandal. I mean, if you want to talk about purity, I mean,
the reality is there's no such thing as purity in college athletics, and there really never has been. I mean, maybe pre-television, but even then, pre-television, Anwar, there were no black people allowed to play. Like, how far back do we want to go? And it's like, well, it was pure except for that whole exclusion thing where the Bubba Smiths of the world couldn't play college football in Texas and had to go to Michigan State because he wasn't allowed to play football in the state of Texas. And to be fair, Larry puts up purity might have been the wrong word. I'm like, purity? Are you kidding me? Okay, closing comments. We'll go into parting shots. Alex, you got a rant today?
I do. I'm not gonna get into. I've touched on it in Slack, and it's a rant.
It's your Senior Bowl rant.
It's the rant. It'll get me canceled. So I'm not giving it. I will say just a shout.
Thank you, by the way.
A shout out to. I've seen him in the comments section. I've seen our guy Big DD. He's been yelling for a shout out, man. So old Big DD, one of the posters of one of the most epic threads in all of Orangebloods history. If you know, you know. But good to see old Big DD in the comments, brother. Hope you're well.
Big DD stayed at my house one time.
Yeah, you told me.
Anwar, speaking of Big DD, a lot of people thought that was me for a long time. Anwar, you got a parting shot?
Well, there's people still think CS is you too, so there is that. My part is I
do you think I'm CS?
Yes.
Oh God!
Jesus, Ketch, I hope you're not CS with some of the shit that guy's told me before.
Hey, here's what you need to know about me. I have made the mistake of having back at let's say between 2000 and 2010, I used to have burner accounts on Orangebloods, especially when I first started the website. It's impossible not to make a mistake and forget to log out.
Right.
And it get to be a point where it was like, what's the risk of getting into trouble for some stupid shit? I make people mad enough. Imagine me being a controversial poster and saying some crazy shit and then it turning out to actually be me. That's the kind of thing that would go viral. And back in the day, I don't even know if Deadspin's still alive, but it feels like that's the kind of thing that would get you on Deadspin. So I am not Kevin Durant. I have one Twitter account. I have one Orangebloods account. I don't even know how to log into the Orangebloods staff handle. I'm as pure as it gets, but people are going to think I'm CS till the day.
Well, CS always says CS says some things that are just antithetical to the way that I know you feel about things. So it would literally take you just having to completely divorce yourself from all the reality that you know and understand, and just put yourself in a completely different character, which to me would be awesome to see. I'm not sure not to say you're not capable.
What if he did it to push the buttons?
Oh, Anwar, there was a couple of years. Anwar, there was a couple of years ago when the site crashed on signing day, when CS set me on fire on signing
It's
day.
like Tyler Durden hitting himself. I just can't see.
Yes, like
Mike
are times.
Mike is correct, by the way.
There are times when CS and I are so aligned on messages. Like he made a post about the Cowboys on Sunday, and he said what I was thinking. But he also made a post yesterday where he loudly proclaimed that he voted for Trump. And I'm like, come on, guys. Really? You think that's me? Anyway, yeah, I'm not CS. I promise. But Anwar thinks I'm CS.
Me and many other people on OB, but I don't want to derail it. Even though Mike Preachel said what he said, thou dost protest too much. So I'm just Mike, you and me.
Hey, real quick, I was going to say Eric Winter back in the day, the head of Rivals.com, called me up. I've told this story before. Called me up on the phone one day. I was like, "Hey, I got to ask you a question," and he was like, "Just tell me the truth. I won't be mad. But are you CS?" Because CS had set Eric Winter on fire. And he was like, "People say that that's you. So I thought maybe you had something you needed to tell me." Anyway, go ahead.
Mine is real simple. Yesterday was my son's 9th birthday. So happy 9th birthday to you, Maximus. We went out and had a great time. It's crazy to think that when I got here to Austin, he was a little bit over a year. And now we're in year 9 as it is. And starting to do the math. I'm like, okay, so 1 away from 10, like 4 away from a teenager. Like, it's like, holy crap, this is really happening. Of course, I had that oops baby. So I still have a young one coming along the way. So I'm nowhere near a finish line, but happy 9th birthday to my dude, Maximus. Love you. So proud of the young man that you're becoming, and look forward to many more exciting years growing and learning with you. Went out to Chili's last night, Ketch. And I was never a person who liked anyone to sing for me for my birthday. I just never enjoyed that. So my thing would always be if someone took me there, I would just sing along with the servers so no one would know who it was. So I just just try to blend in with everyone. But my kid loved it and he enjoyed it. And I realized I hadn't been to Chili's in so many years. But yeah, Maximus had a great time. So happy birthday, Max.
Real quick on Maximus. The first time I met Maximus, he was just a little guy, probably not 2 yet. Like it's about 1.5.
1.5 at most. Yeah.
Yeah. Like I remember we had a big staff dinner. We go to Eddie V's to like meet Anwar and pitch him the idea of coming to Orangebloods, and Maximus at the dinner table had this fork in his hand. I've never been able to forget it. I didn't have kids yet. And I was just looking at Maximus with the fork in his hand and just like wondering, like, is anything going to happen with the fork? And then a couple of years later, I had kids, and it was like, yeah, you let them have the fork, let them have anything other than the steak knife. That'll keep them busy and quiet and like happy in the middle of like a big dinner. But I was thinking, like, our goal, we want Anwar to be at Orangebloods for the next decade plus. Like, we want that our relationship, all of us to be at Orangebloods as long as humanly possible. And I just thought to myself, if we pull that off, there's a good chance that I'll have been able, because Anwar has been potentially with us for that amount of time, able to watch Maximus grow up from 1 to, he just like looks like a little man right now at 9. And it kind of freaks me out. So to hear you talk about him being a teenager, I feel like all of us have had a chance to watch him grow on the fly. And I look forward to more birthday parties for Maximus. And someone mentioned that, yes, this Banded Brotherhood says dope name, Anwar. Anwar, tell him the name of your other son.
Titan.
It's the best 2 names for any 2 boys I've ever heard, ever. Maximus and Titan. Feels like you're kids should be getting their ass kicked if you mess with one of the Richardson boys.
Well,
Who'd
here's
you
the
get in a
deal.
fight with?
Okay,
Maximus?
so Maximus was the planned one, right? So that happened, right? But Titan was my oops baby. And so at that point, I can't go like Maximus and then like Matthew.
Yeah.
Like he doesn't love me, you know? So then I had to find like something else to go along, because I would just went John or, you know, Aaron. He'd be like, man, you gave him Maximus, man, and you gave me like Bartholomew or something.
Well, I can't decide what's a more badass name. Like Maximus is up there because we think of Gladiator, but Titan is about as big as you can get.
Yeah, and Titan's going to be the real badass, just low key.
So you know,
just FYI, like my Maximus may be in counseling one day, but like my dad always loved the younger one. I'm just doing my LeVar Ball projections. I'm telling you, the youngest one is going to be the badass. Just watch out.
God, I love parting shots. By the way, a guy named Money Out de Anus is letting us know that Titan is a better name than Maximus.
We are now officially off the rail.
I'm going to bring us back on the rails real quick. My parting shot is to simply say rest in peace, Greg Robinson. When I heard the news yesterday that former Texas defensive coordinator Greg Robinson had passed, I wrote about this in my column on Orangebloods, but most of you wouldn't have had a chance to read it yet. I had a lot of thoughts cross through my mind. Like the first was, damn, like 70s too young. And there was just like a damn kind of a moment. And then there was I wish I'd been able to know that guy a little bit better, because he only coached at Texas for 2 seasons, once in 2004 and once in 2013. And he always just seemed like a real good guy. And it's funny because Alex and I were talking on Slack yesterday about this very thing. Alex's experience with Greg at the Senior Bowl and, you know, reflected that, just good people. And I always thought that about Greg. I just, you know, back then Anwar, I was the beat guy for Orangebloods. So I was doing all of your duties in terms of press conferences and every media thing that needed to be done. And back then they let you talk to the coordinators pretty frequently, and the access was great. Greg Robinson used to just come sit at a table for 30 minutes to an hour every Tuesday with like 5 of us and answer anything and tell you what was going on, and always had jeans and cowboy boots on and just felt like the most normal, badass coach that I've ever seen. And his players loved him. So, and my third thought about Greg Robinson was, I think he's the best assistant coach that I've ever seen at the University of Texas. More so than Will Muschamp, more so than anybody that you could think of over the course of the last 25, 30 years. He showed up in 2004, and Texas had a reputation for being the softest team in college football. And the year before he showed up, they gave up 38 at home to Arkansas. They gave up 65 to Oklahoma. They gave up 40 plus to Texas Tech in a game that required Chance Mock coming off the bench and saving, and then gave up 28 in the bowl game to Washington State in a game that it felt like a mutiny was about to take place inside the program. They hired Greg Robinson, and immediately the defense got good. And it felt like every team they played in 2004, they gave up at least half as many points as the year before. Instead of giving up 38 to Arkansas, they gave up 20 on the road. Instead of giving up 65 to Oklahoma, they gave up 12. Instead of giving up 40 plus to Texas Tech, they gave up 21. Like, in a world where the Big 12 offenses were really starting to take off, Greg Robinson showed up in 2004 and just did the damn thing. And without Greg Robinson coming in 2004, along with Dick Tomey, there is no national championship in 2005. It doesn't happen without the culture changes that they implemented. And then In 2013, the last year that Orangebloods had Texas football to cover without Anwar Richardson, because he came in 2014, in Mac's last season, Manny Diaz gets fired like first 2 weeks of the season. Greg Robinson comes out of retirement in his 60s, because at that point he'd have been like 63, 62, and made that Texas defense good without a spring, without fall drills, he just could coach. And I don't know that we've ever, as a university, had enough appreciation for just how good he was and how good the job that he did in the 1 8/10 of a season that, I guess, like 9/12, or I guess it'd be 3/4, whatever. I don't know that we've ever had that guy. When you consider how good he's coached defense and how many bad defenses we've seen, Anwar, since you showed up, it might be that Greg Robinson deserves a statue somewhere. Just something to think about. Rest in peace, Greg Robinson. You were a great coach, 2 Super Bowls as a defensive coordinator, but you were also a good dude who I'd never heard anybody say a bad word about. And I never hear that in the purity that is college football. He was one of the good guys. For myself and Alex Dunlap and Anwar Richardson and Jason Sukumel, who's not with us today, hopefully he's feeling better. And for everybody who was like in the chat today, thanks for hanging out with us. We went for like an hour and a half. So thank you for hanging in. We'll do this again next week. Hit the subscribe button. Do it now before you leave. Just hit it. From all of us at orangebloods.com, Happy New Year's. We'll talk to you next week. Later.